Peace, royal family, and thank you all for tuning in to another edition of the original histories of Africa and migrations of the ancient world. I am your King and Royal Majesty, Pharaoh Mitzrayim, historian, geographer, and the voice of truth. And today, I will be revealing the truth on the subject, Ancient Moors in West Africa, 1st century AD, the migration and translation. But before we get started, be sure to like the video and subscribe to this channel. Let us now begin our journey to truth. In this video, we will focus on a north to south migration that took place in the 1st century AD. And the people who made this migration were known to ancient writers as the Marusi or Mori, but are known today as the Moors, who once lived and dwelt in the modern-day region of Morocco in North Africa. And to answer the question, what happened to these Moors, and to find out where did they go, we must go to the source that is contemporary with the time, and that source is found here in Pliny the Elder, Natural History, 77 AD, translated by John Bostock, Book 5, Chapter 1, and it says in quote, "The province of Tinjatina is 170 miles in length. Of the nations in this province, the principal one was formerly that of the Mari, who have given to it the name of Mauritania, and have been by many writers called the Marusi. This nation has been greatly weakened by the disasters of war, and is now dwindled down to a few families only. Next to the Mori was formerly the nation of the Marseillais. They, in a similar manner, have become extinct. Their country is now occupied by the Gatilian nations, the Banure, the Ataloles, by far the most powerful people among them all, and the Vesuni, who formerly were a part of the Ataloles, but have now separated from them, and turning their steps towards the Ethiopians, have formed a distinct nation of their own. According to the source we just read, Pliny the Elder states, the principal or leading nations of North Africa, known as the Marusi or Moors, and the Masasili Numidians, had become greatly weakened by the disasters of war, and their numbers decreased down to a few families, and they became almost extinct. And their land became occupied by the indigenous African people known as the Gutilians. But the question that still has to be answered is, where did these Moors and Numidians go? And we would know the answer to that question had not this text been mistranslated. In the last paragraph of this chapter has been mistranslated by the translator, and the translator added his own interpolations that did not belong in the text, and therefore produced a false translation. But in order to correct this translation, I will show my very own accurate translation directly from the Latin text and find out what Pliny really said. Let's continue. To find out what Pliny the Elder really said in his Natural History, Book 5, Chapter 1, and to tell the truth, I am going to show my very own Latin to English translation. And the truth is found here in the oldest original Latin text of Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Book 5, Chapter 1, and it says in quote, Gutile nunc tenet gentes banure motu validi simi atololes et horum pandam pars nesimi cu alvasi fecer poporium gentem versi ad Ethiopus. And when translated to English, it says in quote, the Gutile now occupy this nation, the migrated, and the great and powerful Ataloles, and these formerly divided as the Nesimi, who separated and created their own nation, turned their steps towards the Ethiopians. According to my very own accurate translation of Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Book 5, Chapter 1, the Nesimi or Vesuni, who migrated south into Ethiopia and formed their own nation, were not of the Gutilian Ataloles nation, but they were of a separate and distinct nation. In this part of the text found in John Bostock's translation, where it says in quote, the Vesuni, who formerly were a part of the Ataloles, is a false translation that was added and interpolated by the translator John Bostock. But so that we can answer the question, who were these Nesimi or Vesuni that migrated south into Ethiopia, we will again read the entire text along with my accurate translation in its full context and answer the question, who were these Nesimi or Vesuni? Let us continue. This time with my very own accurate translation included. We will again go here to Pliny the Elder, Natural History, translated by John Bostock, Book 5, Chapter 1, and it says in quote, of the nations in this province, Tingitana, the principal one was formerly that of the Mori. This nation has been greatly weakened by the disasters of war and is now dwindled down to a few families. Next to the Mori was formerly the nation of the Masasili. They, in a similar manner, have become extinct. The Gutili now occupy this nation, the Banure and the great and powerful Ataloles. And these divided at one time as the Nesimi, who separated and created their own nation, turned their steps towards the Ethiopians. According to Pliny the Elder, Book 5, Chapter 1, in my very own accurate translation, the Nesimi who migrated south to Ethiopia were indeed the last surviving remnant of the Marusi or Moors in the Masasili Numidians, who were conquered by the Romans, and their land became occupied by the Romans and by another nation known as the Gutili. And the Gutili were definitely not the Nesimi, because the Gutili were the newcomers that replaced the Moors in the Masasili. And so that we can get a better understanding of this text, we will eliminate some words, narrow it down, and focus only on the migration and the reason for the migration. Let's continue. Pay close attention and let us again go here to Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Book 5, Chapter 1, and it says in quote, of the nations in this province, the principal one was formerly that of the Mori. This nation has been greatly weakened by the disasters of war and is now dwindled down to a few families only. The Gutilians now occupy this nation, and these divided at one time as the Nesimi, who separated and created their own nation, turned their steps towards the Ethiopians. According to the narrowed down text we just read, we can now say for certain that the Marusi or Moors and the Masasili Numidians were greatly weakened by the disasters of war, decreased down to a few families, and got replaced by the Gutili. And later the Moors and Numidians changed their name to Nesimi, departed out of their old land, and migrated south to Ethiopia. And this is the truth according to the original Latin text of Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Book 5, Chapter 1. But the question that still has to be answered is, where was this land of the Ethiopians located? And to answer that question, Let us continue. To find out the location of the land of the Ethiopians, according to Pliny the Elder, we must go here to Pliny the Elder, Natural History, translated by John Bostock, Book 5, Chapter 8, and it says in quotes, "If we pass through the interior of Africa in a southerly direction beyond the Gotili, after having traversed the intervening deserts, we shall find, first of all, the Libyan Egyptians. Beyond these are the migrated nations of Ethiopia, so-called from the river Nigris." Based on the text we just read, Pliny states the land going south of the Gotili, beyond the Sahara Desert, was inhabited by a people known as the Libyan Egyptians, and the Ethiopians known as the migrated, a nation of Ethiopia. And this is the land of the Ethiopians that the Nisime, Moors, and Numidians migrated to and settled in. And the migrated are identified today as the people of the Niger River. And the Libyan Egyptians directly north of the migrated are identified today as the people of northern Mali and Mauritania in West Africa. But the question that still has to be answered is, who were the ancestors of these Moors and Numidians? To answer that question, let's continue. To find out who were the ancestors of the ancient original Moors and Numidians, we must go here to Josephus Flavius, Antiquities of the Jews, 93 AD, translated by William Whiston, Book 1, 130, and it says in quotes, "Phut was also the founder of Libya, and called the inhabitants Phutites from himself. There is also a river in the country of the Moors which bears that name. But the name it has now has been by change given it from one of the sons of Mesrahim, who was called Libyos." According to the most contemporary source we just read, Josephus Flavius states the ancestors of the original Moors were a people known as the Phutites or Phut, the descendants of Cam or Kemet, who came from the land of Kemet in Egypt. And their other ancestors were a people known as the sons or descendants of Mesrahim, who also came from Egypt or Kemet. And this is the truth according to Josephus Flavius. And on this, I conclude. So there it is. When the source is brought forth, the truth comes out. And when the source is present, the truth cannot be denied. And truth is, the last surviving remnants of these original Moors and Numidians changed their name to Nisimi, departed out of North Africa, migrated south beyond the Sahara Desert, and settled in the land of the Ethiopians along the Niger River in West Africa. And the ancestors of these original Moors and Numidians were the descendants of Phut and Misrahim from Egypt. And the modern day people of Morocco and Algeria are not the descendants of these original Moors and Numidians from Egypt, but they are the descendants of indigenous non-Egyptian Berbers, Romans, and Arab invaders. But the true descendants of these original Moors and Numidians are indeed the modern day people of West Africa and the African Americans in America. And this is the truth concerning the migration of the original Moors. I arrest my case.